Okay, I think we got it. Cool. All right, everybody. Welcome, Facebook fans. It's Kelly Lang here with Remax and Scott Fromme here with Envoy, and we're super excited to have everybody on. I hope everybody's staying safe out there with all this heavy flooding and weather we've been having. So, yeah, it looks like Breezy's jumping on. Hi, Miss Breezy. How's it going?
Hey, it's good.
Awesome. So what we're covering right now is the cost of waiting. So, and what that means to our consumer pool, that is, we get a lot of clients that call us and they're like, oh, I'm going to hold off on buying, and this may have been going on for years that we've been working with them. And they say, hey, I want to wait another year. I feel like the prices are too high. So that's a constant conversation that we have to have with our clients. And I know Scott probably has that as well. And so what we wanted to address is the cost of waiting. So why it's important to, buy a house now, what opportunities there are to buy right now, and what that means for money in your, in your savings account, equity in your house, your biggest asset that you have. And so that was one thing we just kind of wanted to go over. So we could run some numbers and discuss, what does that look like? If you bought last year, how much equity did you have in your house versus, hey, I want to hold off and wait through 2022 and make it to 2023. How much money and appreciation am I actually losing by not investing in yourself right now? So, Scott, I'll let you kind of take the reins on that. And then I'll maybe give a little bit of a market cap recap as well. So what does that look like in your line of work when you're penciling numbers with your clients to figure equity and appreciation on housing?
Well, it all depends on the market, but if you look at last year, what prices were up like 25%?
Absolutely.
Is that right? About right.
Yep.
So that a $400,000 house last year would be close to, early last year would be close to maybe a $500,000 house this year. So you missed out on $100,000 in appreciation if you put off your home buying by a year. Which I think last year was probably an extraordinary year.
It really was. Let's talk about an average. If you like a healthy appreciation, you may see 4, 6, 8%, depending upon the location of the neighborhood and what's happening in the market. So even when you do the numbers on that, take a $400,000 house, take 10% is 40K, minus out another, couple percent. You're losing, $32,000 a year by not investing in yourself in homeownership.
Right.
So let's touch on another thing too, talking about interest rates, because there's a lot more to factor than just equity that you could be losing when you're not purchasing a home and you're continuing to rent. So the rates have slightly gone up, nothing major to write about. But that is also factored into what the cost of waiting comes into as well. And that, rates going up, housing pricing going up. And when you do the math, I mean, it's a lot of money you're leaving on the table by, continuing to wait. So, what you can afford today versus what you can afford next year. So maybe let's talk through a couple scenarios like that. So maybe let's run a number on a $400,000 VA house, since we tend to work a lot in the Oak Harbor market as well.
Sure. So I ran some numbers on a $400,000 house, which right now, last year would probably have appreciated this year to somewhere around 500. Rents right now are about 2,400 probably for that house. If you look at a $2,400 payment, PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, that's about a $487,000 purchase. So you would want to, because when you rent, I mean, basically you're making somebody else's payment or paying them for, the use of their property. If you purchase, then you can end up with the same or lower payment, but you can also, there's some other benefits to it, to purchasing. The second one, other than appreciation, the big one is that I thought was a big one. It's always been a big incentive for me to purchase, is the tax write-off that you obtain from purchasing a home, because you can write off your your property taxes. I believe you can still write that off. You should check with a tax person to double check on this, but and you can write off the mortgage interest. So those are two huge deductions that you can have that can lower your effective tax rate.
Yeah.
The other thing, you would gain equity when you start to pay the loan down. As you start to make payments, the balance drops over time. So you owe less and less as long as you make the payments. You get to use the home kind of more as you wish. You can have pets without problems. You can decorate. You can change things around, change them up, do whatever you prefer with the house if you own it. Whereas if you rent it, not so much. Long term, if you look at and this is an example, and I was thinking about it when I was writing up this outline. When I first started in the business, I remember I was financing a house in Westridge, which is south. It's just you're headed south. It's just south of town towards Coopville, but still in the city limits. And I remember I was very proud of myself because I ended up getting an E5 into the house, and it was $70,000.
No way.
So you figure it was $70,000. Kelly, what would you say a house in Westridge would go for now?
What? Give me a size wise. Like, what were your square footage ish?
They figured 1,200 square feet, something like that.
Gosh, 3-bed, 2-bath. I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, the crazy thing right now is Oak Harbor's median price point is about, $550-ish range. I mean, you'd probably be somewhere in the, high fours, 450, 500.
Yeah. So look at what the appreciation on that house has done over, well, it's been 30 years. So, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. And it all occurs in kind of small, imperceptible changes normally, other than the last few years. But I think housing is an excellent long-term investment. It's a bit riskier over the short term.
Yeah.
You are insulated from rent increases if you purchase. I mean, you'll see some changes in your payments because the taxes will increase, but it's not nearly as much as going up as much as what the rent increases are. I can remember when $1,000 a month was an outrageous rent for a house.
Yeah.
And it wasn't 30 years ago, it was maybe 10. You could rent a house for $1,000 a month. It's doubled over that time or more.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the hard thing is a lot of people come in and think, I'm going to consider renting versus buying. But then when you actually do the math, you'll see that it's actually cheaper to have a mortgage, especially with your VA loan, than it is to actually go pay rent in Oak Harbor and the surrounding areas. So, and this is where, Scott really comes into play, and having a good local agent like us on your side is extremely helpful because we can do both sides of the equation. We can say, okay, what, a house that's, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square feet. What are you paying for that in Oak Harbor versus what are you paying for rent? And then you can sit and do some simple math, with a good lender like Scott and go, okay, if I wait, what's that look like? And right now we've just seen so much appreciation over the last 4 or 5 years that same scenario. I just listed a house in Rolling Hills, and they bought it as a short sale back in 2011. And it was like 225,000, and now we're selling it for 500,000. So, I mean, the amount of equity my clients made in a total of 9 years was insane, and so I think a lot of people think, oh, it's too hard to get in and get a loan, but you guys, honestly, it's actually really relatively painless and easy when you think of all the loan products that are out there that can help you achieve homeownership. And if you're planning on staying in a place for a certain amount of time, even if you keep it as a long-term rental, it's a great investment to have. I don't know, Scott, do you remember what the quote is about how much more equity the homeowner has versus the average renter? I want to say like the renter is about $4,000 and the homeowner has about, 220,000 to 250 worth of equity in their home, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I saw some other numbers that were just based on total net worth. And it was maybe $20,000 for a renter, 15, and then it was 80 or more $400,000. I mean, it's on the internet, but it's a giant difference between an owner's net worth versus, on average versus a renter.
Absolutely. And the other conversation you always want to have with your agent when you're moving into town is, how long are your orders? How long are you planning on being in that house? I mean, I know we can't always predict what's going to happen in the future, but that does give us a good idea of whether it's smart to buy or rent too, and then talking about keeping that property maybe a little bit longer as a rental as well. So, and those are all things we can obviously help educate on as well. So you talked a little bit about the quality of life. Just trying to think if there's anything else we wanted to touch on. Equity.
I was thinking, I mean, from a family situation, owning a home is, to me anyway, I don't know that I ever really want to rent again if I can help it. I just, I like the feeling of independence. I don't have anybody kind of watching over, making sure their house is in good shape. I'm taking care of my own house. So if I want to pound holes in the walls and hang pictures, I can do that, or whatever, anything like that, paint the rooms different colors, whatever. The other thing that people think is kind of an obstacle is the cash required to buy a house. And it's really, if you look at it and you compare it with renting, it's fairly similar. I would say on average, like closing costs for a VA loan, and there are other programs out there that are conventional that are also zero down that you can do. Or FHA, there's a state program. So I kind of, I've been more interested in aiming this at maybe first time buyers that are kind of unfamiliar with the home purchase process. But you're probably on average maybe $7,500 in closing costs and prepaids, total cash to close, assuming that you go with a zero down. If you go rent a house, you have generally first and last, and then a security deposit. And if you figure that same number, you're pretty darn close probably to that $7,500 that it would cost you to get a rental.
Absolutely.
So it makes sense, especially over the very long term, but even over, if you're going to keep it as a rental and a long-term investment, that's great too.
Yeah.
So.
And another thing to factor in too, and I know when you're actually renting a place, a lot of renters don't think about this, but we've seen year over year about 3% rental increases. And with COVID and kind of the lockdown of not being able to raise rent for 2 years, we saw an instant 6% increase in rent when there was the lockdown of not being able to raise those rents. And so that's a huge amount, you guys, of what your rentals increases versus you buying a house and getting to earn that equity in the property and not having your payment adjust because they're 30-year fixed or a 30-year VA. And so that's really huge to consider, is you earning the equity versus your landlord raising the rent that 3 to 6% every year on you and causing your rental amount to go up. So one of the things, Breezy, you had a question. Breezy, you want to unmute yourself? I think you had a question.
Yeah. Hi, Scott. I just had a quick question. I've been getting a lot of questions from clients about, with the new year coming up, what are the interest rates going to look like? So beginning of 2022, what do you kind of see happening with those interest rates?
Well, nobody really knows for sure. But that being said, what you're seeing is, the Fed's making noises like they're going to end or cut back on their purchases of mortgage-backed securities. So that's going to basically should create an increase in the interest rate. You're also seeing inflation, which is really, I guess it's a good thing if you own hard assets like a house, but it's a bad thing if you're trying to go buy food and things like that and rent and buy a car or whatever. And those factors are negative for interest rates, meaning we're seeing an upward trend, and I think that's going to continue. My manager told me we'd see rates, and he doesn't know either, but he just probably heard it somewhere because it's a market determined thing, but he figured 4% maybe, sometime next year.
And so that gives more reason. Just kind of one of the other topics that we've been having in some of our meetings on Tuesday is the opportunities for buyers right now. And I know sometimes buyers don't see it this way because there's been a lot of buyer fatigue in the market, but you guys, trust me, there's opportunity right now. These winter months are prime time for buyers. And what I mean by that is as inventory sits a little bit longer due to weather, the time of year of selling, houses will sit a little bit longer and there is more opportunity to negotiate. So you may get some of your closing costs covered. You may get some off the price. And so because there are sellers that want to close prior to the year's end, because there are going to be some tax law changes that happen in 2022 that we don't know fully what they are. So there are sellers that want to get their houses sold and under contract. So please keep that in mind. And exactly what Scott's talking about too is that if the rates, what's a conventional at right about now, just roughly? Is it in the
three to 3.25?
Okay. So keep that in mind that, next year, if they do raise to 4, it does put a little bit of a damper on how much you can actually buy. So you've got still lower rates here. You've got more opportunity during the winter months. So definitely feel that out. And, we've seen some of the inventory, kind of decline, but in the winter months, it is taking longer to sell. So some opportunity and some doors opening for our buyers that have been wanting to get in houses over the last couple of years and have struggled with the competition. So let's see, on that note, I think that's all I had. Scott, was there anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, just thank you very much for asking me to participate today.
Yeah. So. And so you guys, here's the main thing is if you have questions about the cost of waiting or what it's like to buy, we're happy to always walk you through the process, make it easy and fun. You can go in with Scott and your agent and have a consult and just sit down and kind of go through your options. That's what he's there for. He's a resource to help plan and help to get prepared to buy a house. So you guys, it's 30 days to close, 30 to 45 days to close. And we can go over the cost to purchase so you know what you'd have out of pocket and make the process easy and fun for you. Awesome. Well, thanks, Scott, with Envoy for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. Breezy's awesome. She's one of our buyer's agents here on Team Kelly Lang, and she's a wealth of knowledge as well. And so again, Kelly Lang here with Remax, and super appreciate you guys for tuning in. All right, you guys.
Thank you very much.